Good morning, everybody, and happy Palm Sunday for those who observe. More importantly, I'm gonna get in trouble again. Happy Wrestlemania Sunday, and even happy Indictamania Sunday. From an undisclosed location in Columbia, Maryland, you are watching or listening to another edition of Forward Maryland. My name is Bill Woodcock.
And live from my car, I'm Steve Hunt. Normally, Bill, I do these outside on Sundays, but for those of you who don't live in Maryland, we've had some hellacious winds and they're still kicking. So I figured you didn't want to hear me in a wind tunnel, so you can hear me in the echoes of a car.
So thank you for making that clarification for those YouTube commenters and others who were asking whether Steve still has a home. Indeed, he does. He still lives in his home. He does not live in his car. He does not live outside. He is still very much a Howard County resident. Joining us for today's August program, we have unfortunately had the spring fever bug, or whatever it might be called, allergies, whatnot, take out a couple of our panelists at the last minute. However, welcoming back to the show for his second appearance, one away from the coveted 3-appearance smoking jacket, satellite program manager and known as the MCW's Platinum Nat Forgotson. Nat, welcome back.
Thank you, and absolutely, with it being Palm Sunday and being Platinum Nat, the holiest man in wrestling, I gotta say hallelujah, brothers and sisters.
We are all entering the village today, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, and the village we are entering is one of debauchery and ill repute, and to be sure,
and so well-informed ignorance.
Oh, well-informed ignorance is what we do, sir. You've heard us. So with that, we cannot, our main event for today is, of course, talking about all things pro wrestling. So I'm going to tell you right now, those of you looking for any erudite takes, any deep pulls about local or state government or national affairs, forget about it. This is all red meat. And after about 10 minutes on the indictment of Cheeto Jesus, we're going to talk all about pro wrestling for the balance of the hour. So just if you don't like it, tune out now. Good.
But just remember, Bill, whether they like it or don't like it, they need to learn
to love it because it's the best thing going today. Woo! See, we've already started. So, gentlemen, historic times in America, which is why the USA Olympic ball cap of '84, maybe the best amateur baseball team ever assembled. A person who has served as the President of the United States has been criminally indicted, ending the 50-year-long argument ever since the Nixon administration, almost as long as all three of us have been alive, whether or not a president can be indicted. Steve, your thoughts, please, sir.
Well, there are 4 matters out there, and you had to think that one of them was going to end this way, or at least it was going to have this particular stage of indictment, etc. I honestly did not think it was going to be this one because, as you know, I'm not a legal person, but I watch a lot of them on TV. Most legal folks say this is the weakest of the 4 between this one, Mar-a-Lago, Georgia, Jan 6. But the thing about it being the weakest, it probably is the easiest one to get to indictment because there's not too much there. The shocker here, and we don't know what it is because there's not been an unsealing, as they call it. I'm hearing 34 counts or something. I did not know there were that many that would have come out because this seems to be just a pay hush money thing. But that's the thing that's got me interested is what else do they have related to this? So it was going to happen. It happened. We've cracked the seal. Let's have some fun with it. But that's the thing I'm interested to see is how many counts are there and what are they related to? And is it deeper than just this transfer of money to pay off Stormy Daniels?
Okay. Nat, I'm going to give you the option to participate in this discussion or not. Up to you, sir.
No, that's totally fine. And yeah, I know I'm here for somewhat behalf of wrestling, but I'm happy to share my very Massachusetts informed liberal opinion. But the way I look at it is there's enough there. We've seen Trump his entire career. And it's obvious that there's a lot of unethical stuff that goes on in the background. And it was just a matter of turning over rocks. There was going to be something found, and Steve's totally right. This was a quick path to get something on him because there was such a drive with all the different things he's done to find the quickest way to get him in the spotlight of the courtroom. But he's trying to turn it into wrestling, the whole thing, trying to make himself look like the big baby face right now. And this is me being a victim. In fact, I saw Dan McDevitt, the head of MCW, posted something about it's the same. He's trying to position himself like Stone Cold Steve Austin, being unfairly persecuted and put himself over as the babyface. And I just don't know if that's going to fly.
The thought of Donald Trump showing up at a rally, throwing out Don Weisers to the crowd is just absolutely making me sick right now. In fact, how come he hasn't come out with Trump beer? The greatest charade since Billy Beer. For those of you who may remember, well, I was like 9 and 10, and I actually had one. But anyway, that's another matter.
There's Trump Vineyards right there. We've got Trump.
Oh, Jesus, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, is he going to throw out wine to that crowd? Is he really? I mean, even in boxes?
If it's fortified, perhaps. I'm sure he could make Trump 2020 instead of Mad Dog 2020.
He could make Trump 2024.
Yes, absolutely.
It would be awesome.
I'm unfortunately giving him branding ideas. We'll just keep quiet.
I'm sure he's thought about some of this. I mean, I came up with the Trump coin, which I still don't understand why that's not a thing. Why does Trump and crypto seem to be two things that would just go great together? Just a Reese's peanut butter cup of suck. Anyway, in terms of my thoughts, I agree with everybody. I mean, this is going to be the first of 4, right? So this is going to be, and I hate the word unprecedented. It's so bastardized and used ad nauseum these last 3 years. But here it does apply, but it's not going to apply for long because the other 3 are coming. We know they're going to come. He's going to get convicted on one of these, if not more. And then what's going to happen? I mean, at first, I was kind of going when this first came out. I was kind of going, "Oh, I'm sorry for our country. I'm sorry that we're going through this." But you know what? This is what other countries go through. Other countries have and Western countries have taken former leaders who do criminal things and penalize them and sanction them. So you know what? It's the United States' turn. We're not any better. We're not any worse. It's okay. We're going to get over it. I think we talked about the political implications of this, and of course, this is going to bolster his standing in the Republican primary. What's going to be fascinating is how this measures against his ability to run for and serve office. It will be quite ironic to have a president or a presidential candidate who cannot vote for himself for president. And if he's a convicted felon, that's exactly where we're going to go. I'm not looking forward to the spectacle of what's probably going to be Tuesday when he gets arrested and arraigned in New York. It's good that they're already dry running it to see how it goes. I actually expect he'll be quiet. I actually expect it'll be civil, and respectful of the rule of law, which gets me to another point, which is even that in the face of all of this stuff going on, he's still out there trying to call for his supporters to protest, just like he did leading up to January 6th. But I mean, I don't know. I'm not an intelligence expert. I'm not a Homeland Security expert. I don't know anything other than what I see on the news about chatter in the universe. And I know what I see on social media. I don't see an angrier than normal Trump social media. I don't see, talk about, having some rally on January 6th in DC and listen to Trump and listen to these people say that he's being unfairly persecuted. It seems to be kind of mild, which I think is a good thing. I think it means that, they've shut up. I think it means that they're still out there. I think it means that there's still as many of them as there have been before, but that they're quiet. And to complete the wrestling analogies y'all have started, they're knowing their roles and they're shutting their mouths. So
Do
with
you really
that,
do you really think that there's going to be a trend towards people coming back from DeSantis to Trump as a result of all this?
Nat, it's a good question. I mean, I don't know how many people have really gone from Trump to DeSantis. I mean, people put this man's face on their bodies in tattoos. I mean, I really believe that we're overestimating the number of people who have switched from Trump to DeSantis. I mean, I think that, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I think that like the people like us who maybe are a little bit more well-read and worldly, but yet they're conservative as opposed to liberal. I believe that there's a quantity of those people who are saying, Trump was just way too much crazy. DeSantis is conservative and we'll get a conservative guy without all Trump's bullshit. But the by and large, I would say the 90% of the 35% of the Republican Party who absolutely adore him, I think they're going to continue.
Yeah, I agree because, and I think the other problem is not just their love of Trump, and to your point, Bill, tattooing his likeness and image on their body parts. I also think this is partly DeSantis, who, if this was supposed to be his soft launch ahead of possibly jumping in for real, it's not been good. These last couple of weeks have not shown him to be ready for prime time. So I think if DeSantis looked better, I guess for lack of a better word, as far as how he has performed on the big, semi-big stage, he's maybe night one, not night two yet, but I don't think he's given people reason to bail on Trump for those who were kind of wobbly on Trump. And he's really the only one that would be, he's the only one I see as a viable alternative right now. He's not looking good as an alternative.
Oh, no one else is going to come up and bite him. No one else. No Nikki Haley, no Kristi Noem, no Mike Pompeo, no Pence. Forget about it. It's these two. So, interestingly enough, there is a Washington Post. In fact, if you get the Washington Post, pick up the Sunday Post or read it online. There's a fascinating review in the opinion section of a new book entitled Ringmaster, which looks at the connection between Donald Trump and Trumpism in the guise of a biography of the founder and chairman of World Wrestling Entertainment. And full disclosure, I own, I believe, 1.4 shares of World Wrestling Entertainment on Robinhood. But the chair of World Wrestling Entertainment, Vince McMahon. And so besides it being Indictamania weekend, it has been well programmed for about 2 years now to be Wrestlemania weekend, as Wrestlemania Goes Hollywood, the 39th edition of the Showcase of the Immortals, this year emanating from SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, California. I believe a good enough place to start, and all three of us are within the same decade of life. We're all in our sixth decade of life, but I believe our and I'm going to ask Nat for this, but for, just kind of go through history of WrestleManias and just, summarize the 3, 5, 7, hell, it could be 50 moments that stand out through the history of of professional wrestling showcase event.
All right. Well, WrestleMania is the reason I'm still a fan to this day. It was WrestleMania 3, honestly. I had gotten into wrestling because I was a fan of the A-Team first, kind of followed Mr. T and paid attention because of that. But it was Ricky Steamboat and Randy Macho Man Savage that kept me just glued to the screen and where I wanted to keep watching and eventually participate. That was my favorite feud of all time. The build up to that, Randy Macho Man Savage dropping the ring bell on Ricky Steamboat's throat, and Ricky finally getting his revenge and winning the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 3. That was it. That was the moment. There's been plenty since then, and it's enough that it's kept me coming back. And we've watched, all of us, through the eras of Hulk Hogan and the Warrior, into the DX era in the 90s, Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, and all the way up to today. And I think Roman Reigns is deserving of consideration and the discussion of some of the best headliners of all time. Is this storyline they've been doing with the Bloodline for the last couple of years has been so engrossing, and it's pulled fans in. And it's one of those things that has hopped the cultural barrier into pop culture and being known outside of wrestling, drawing new fans in.
Steve?
Well, I'll get to Roman Reigns in a second, but for me, it was also WrestleMania 3. I was in college at the time, and they showed it. It was obviously on what today is pay-per-view, but we had a little bar near us. They showed it on closed circuit, and yeah, that was the one that got me. I still, WrestleMania moments. The gold standard for me is still the Taker Foley match. How a human being could go through that, I have no idea. So for me, that's the one that you say WrestleMania, I say, that hell in, on, around, on top of the Cell match between those two. Interesting about Roman Reigns, if I know we're putting plugs in for different media outlets, but ESPN.com has a great article on what is called the Samoan Dynasty. If you get a chance, check it out. And they argue, and I don't disagree with them, that the Samoan dynasty, the family dynasty, might be the greatest dynasty in professional wrestling history, short of the McMahons. Above the Harts, above the Von Erichs, above the Rhodeses, the Flairs, name a family. And it goes all the way back to High Chief Peter Maivia in the 70s. Talks about his friendship with Rocky Johnson. Maivia introduces Rocky to his sister. They get married, have a son, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. But it goes through the Samoan SWAT team, the Wild Samoans. It goes through the Tonga Kid, Yokozuna, who I did not know, not Japanese, Samoan. And then obviously it comes all the way through to the Usos and Roman Reigns. And it's just almost a 50-year history of this family of relatives and cousins and others. And an interesting sidelight is in the 80s, there was this young 14-year-old kid who was like a diehard wrestling guy and somehow finagled credentials to be a photographer at house shows. The Samoan family took him in. They're friends to this day. Guy by the name of Paul Heyman. So this article is fascinating when you see the connections of these different family members. They all hang out. They all knew each other as kids. So Nat, to your point, Roman Reigns, the bloodline. Part of that, and they talk about the article, is that Reigns and Heyman really have worked hard to craft this whole program, and they are like hand in hand working this thing to make it as good as it's become. So you had a Paul Heyman behind this whole angle. So it's a great article and things I did not know. But yeah, it's a real history of that clan, we'll call it, of relatives who have built up this great history in wrestling.
So I'm going to go 3 for 3 with WrestleMania 3 being my first great WrestleMania moment, in part because it was the first WrestleMania I saw live, having waited until the release of the VHS tape to see WrestleManias 1 and 2 from Errol's home video, God rest its soul. But having seen the results the Monday after in the sports section of the Baltimore Sun. which never before had pro wrestling been carried in the sports section of the Baltimore Sun. And then after WrestleMania 1, they would, I believe, once a week list the rankings in the different territories of the WWF, the NWA, USWA, Mid-South, and a few others. The great moments in the actual sport itself of pro wrestling, starting with not just that Savage Steamboat match, but Hulk Hogan picking up and slamming the eighth wonder of the world, the 7'4", 525 gentleman from Grenoble, France, Andre the Giant. Going there to the tournament and WrestleMania 4. To the breaking up of the Mega Powers in 5, to the Warrior Savage matchup in 6. Go to 10, the first ever ladder match between Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon. The beautifully choreographed and well-told story of the main event of WrestleMania 12, the Stone Cold Steve Austin Bret Hart match, where it was a complete double turn, and which was told during the course of that match. The WrestleManias, I believe they were 18 and 19, that featured Hogan versus The Rock, which was a changing of the guard and a changing of the generations in the history of the sport. Further on, and then the rise of John Cena, the rise of a Daniel Bryan, the consistency of Triple H, and of course the incredible undefeated streak, which I believe ended at 25-1, or was it 26-1, of the Undertaker. And you go to today, the last few years, WrestleMania has been a 2-year extravaganza and a 2-night extravaganza. It's also featured the induction of the WWE Hall of Fame, which one year included one Donald J. Trump as one of the inductees. Also, of course, included Pete Rose, both as the gobbledygooker and as himself. And now this year's, and now leading to this year's, which seems to be moving away from the storyline of the Samoans, and I want to get to that in a minute, Steve. And as the preamble to the song goes, wrestling has more than one royal family, and the very possible and likely beginning of the reign of the son of the American Dream, who was not supposed to amount to anything in wrestling, Cody Rhodes. Incidentally, that I am completely marking out for a 34-year-old pro wrestler is just not right. But I don't know why, but I'm just a huge Cody Rhodes fan. I adore what he has done with his career. I mean, he came up as just an arrogant punk of a schmuck when he was first with the WWE. I mean, you can tell it wasn't an act. You can tell it was really him. And they just buried him. And they buried him under a couple of ridiculous gimmicks. The last one being as Goldust's more unstable brother Stardust. He quit WWE, found himself in Japan, found himself with another stable called the Bullet Club in Japan. AEW started. He came back over and completely rehabilitated his career and found a new attitude and found reverence for the sport, and I think also a little bit for the family that he kind of disdained and put to the side. So his transformation has been really amazing. But to your point, Steve, about the Samoans, and that you said this too, it has been an amazing, incredible run. And the lineage, Steve, you are dead on. Incidentally, I mean, I don't watch much sitcom TV, but for those of you with Peacock or just watching it on NBC, that show Young Rock is so cute. I
Is it?
mean, it really is just a cute show. And of course, it tells, for those of you who don't know, it's basically Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's life story, told as he was about 9, 10, as he was just graduated from high school, or college rather, and a few years later, as he's been starting his career. And it's a really, it's just a really good tale that humanizes the wrestlers, humanizes the business. All that being said, we all know, and we talked about this last time, the professional wrestling business is not a humanistic one. It's not one that treats people well. It's not one that treats people with care. But we can't deny it. World Wrestling Federation, World Wrestling Entertainment has been the name brand in professional wrestling for 40 years now. It has been the baby of the McMahons. I mean, the Jarretts and the Khans and the Bischoffs, the Heymans, the Ted Turners have all come up and tried to knock Vince off of his perch. And that's not happening, and it's not likely to happen anytime soon.
No.
So what I want to share is I think this is something that Len Foxwell said last time we talked wrestling. Just wrestling winds up being indicative of and reflective of the popular culture of our time. I mean, and today's WWE is no different. I mean, you have, they're not cartoonish caricatures anymore as what we saw in say the 90s in the WWF, but we definitely do have characters that whose personalities run the gamut, from the inspirational baby faces to the irredeemable heroes, villains, and everything in between. And it almost seems today that pretty much every wrestling character used to be, all those characters were at either one extreme or the other. Today, it seems like everybody's clumped up around the middle. That you have very few all good guys, all bad guys. Even when you talk about the Bloodline, Steve, and their title reigns of, the Usos for over a year, Roman Reigns's for over 2 years. They're not particularly hated.
Right.
I wouldn't say that people, that they make people angry, that they make people want to throw batteries out of the crowd. As they work on the mic and as they work on the ring, they have things that people can go, yay, and then they have things that people can go, aw, screw you. Nat,
no one really wants to be
nodding a lot. Speak to that a little bit, because you're the person with the experience in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to say that there's very few pure heels anymore. I think people don't want to be that way. They want to still interact with the crowd and be on social media and be celebrities. And the way it used to be is if you were a heel, you didn't talk to the crowd except to insult them on the shows. You didn't interact with them afterwards. One of the only guys I see doing that anymore is MJF. He has embraced 100% being the bad guy, except when he goes to his hometown. Other than that, he is just completely embraced it. And I've seen it with him in person at some of these wrestling conventions and working MCW shows. He's not going to come out through the curtain afterwards and sign autographs. If you're hated, you don't suddenly turn that off at the end of the show. And it's hard to be a pure babyface these days because you end up looking like a chump. You're so trusting and you get turned on over and over again the way Hogan did. And at the time, it's just we needed to keep feeding Hogan bad guys for him to beat. And so he had to get victimized at the beginning and then have the big comeback and defeat whoever was coming after him. You don't see that as much anymore. At least it's more subtle in the way the storytelling is put together.
MJF, for those who may not know, is Maxwell Jacob Friedman, the world champion of AEW, who spews bile with every syllable he sneers out of his face. It's insane.
Yeah.
Steve,
now, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well,
I was going to just mention that the heel world is just not what it used to be. And I'm paying tribute today with my t-shirt to our newest inductee, women's wrestling champion of the world, Andy Kaufman, from back in Memphis. Was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame this weekend. And I absolutely loved everything he did. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, there's a documentary on what he did called I'm From Hollywood, which I've encouraged all of my wrestling students to watch. If you don't know how to be a heel, watch Andy Kaufman do it, because he was one of the best. And as I rewatched it recently in just the last week or two, he was so hated. People wanted to kill him, like you were saying, Bill, throwing batteries at the bad guys in the ring, because they didn't play around. They were out there just to insult people, get so hated that people couldn't wait to pay money to see some good guy kick their butt.
Yeah, you're right about Kaufman. There's also A&E, I think, has partnered with WWE in a lot of different. It's like they're usually 1 hour. There's a couple that are 2 hours, and there's some anthologies, but they're also greatest feuds. And I think one of them is Kaufman versus Lawler, and it gets into that whole angle, which is I'm with you. That it's one of the greatest things I've ever seen. I just is still blown away just seeing old clips of the slap on. Was it Letterman? I think it was, and some other things, but. I think what changed a lot of it was the whole idea of the cool heel. And to me, the first cool heels were the Four Horsemen at NWA. I mean, they did everything they could to make you hate them, and you were like, but they're kind of cool. I like Flair's whole shtick. I like Anderson's kind of quiet, stewing but then obviously you went to the Attitude Era, and the line I think really got blurred there because Stone Cold, started out as a bad guy. Everybody didn't like him because he took out, Jake the Snake. But then it was like, well, wait a minute, I kind of like him. And, same thing with DX, NWO. Even The Rock, when he came out as Rocky Maivia, pure babyface, what was it? Die, Rocky, Die, and Rocky sucks. And then he found himself on, what was it? Like it was a Saturday night show when he started working on that whole Rock character. So I think you guys are right. It's the line is, I don't even know if it's blurred. I don't even know if it exists anymore.
Yeah.
And it makes it easy for folks to flip back and forth, but you don't get that. I just want this guy to get the crap kicked out of him. I don't know you have that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, to speak to Nat's point, I mean, MJF, I want to see get the crap kicked out of him, but he does talk so well on the mic. I get a little bit sick of his way back when I was a good guy, I had a girlfriend who wrecked a car and I made it look like she was driving, and that sort of nonsense. I like it when he rips apart his current opponents, when he's contemporaneous. Very, very Piper-esque from the days when the Rowdy Scott was indeed just vile. But Nat, you brought up a good point, and I want to kind of draw it out because you spoke to something that I see. It's the lifting of the veil. And I guess I see that in two different respects. I think I see it in the respect of what you were mentioning about, everybody wants social media likes. I mean, they want to be, respected. They want followers. I mean, it's how they market their brand. I mean, to me, pound for pound, the most evil person in WWE, the character is Bayley. I like Bayley, but she's mean. She's a total, what. But even when you go to her Instagram, she's out there with her gals, laughing it up, and she does kind of stay in character, like she hangs out. She shows pictures with the other two women in her faction and all that. I think she shared a picture that when she went to go see the wrestler formerly known as Sasha Banks, win a championship in Japan recently, which was awesome. But also how individual wrestlers' experiences play out in terms of what goes on in their wrestling careers. I mentioned before about Cody Rhodes. Roman Reigns is another great one. Having had leukemia and having been off the road for, over a year, and then coming back and then rising up to be champ and then having a 2-year run. I'm going to kind of make this the last discussion point because I know we need to end at 11. But Nat, I'll give it back to you, and then Steve, I want to hear your thoughts on that.
What was the actual question in all of that?
Well, do you believe that there's also that second parting?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And people know, everyone knows what's going on, and it's one of the things that has been so emotional over the last 10 years is always those retirement speeches where the people can't wrestle anymore for whatever reason and they walk away, and then somehow 5-6 years later they're back wrestling again. Bryan Danielson being one of those, and similarly Edge. They walked away, they were done, and yet somehow they got themselves in good enough shape. And it's again part of that coming back and redeeming yourself and trying to be even a bigger star than you once were, being at the forefront of the industry again when you have battled all of these personal crises. It draws people in, and it is a different aspect. It's not just storytelling that's on TV, but people know about the personal lives of the wrestlers, and they want to be part of that personal life. So the more that gets shared, the more invested the fans actually are.
And to your point, this was in Edge's case, for example. I'll just use him. This was his actual life. He actually had neck injuries that kept him from competing. And eventually, through whatever means, he was able to get cleared again and he was able to compete. And you can't, so it wasn't one of those, loser leaves town matches where, 2-3 months later they come back. Right. In real life, his career was over. And, you don't get to see, Johnny Unitas didn't come back in 1978 and lead the Colts to a Super Bowl. He left. He was a broken guy on the field. He left. But somehow, with the athleticism and the physical requirements to perform in professional wrestling, they're better able to carry it off. Steve, what say you?
Well, I think the internet changed everything, and Nat probably can speak to this better than I can, being in the business, is you really can't hide anything anymore. You used to be, to your point, Bill, if someone would get enough energy up to do a loser leaves the business match, they would lose and that would be it. Or you'd hear on a Saturday night or a Monday night program, somebody was viciously attacked by whoever the heel was you were trying to build up, and they were going to be out for 6 months. And because of injuries sustained by getting run over by a semi, tractor trailer or something, you just can't get away with that anymore because, information is too widespread and it's distributed too quickly. And to the credit of the business, they've embraced it by I think maybe it was during the Attitude Era. I forget what it was when they started talking about, wrestling, it's a real thing, or I forget, somebody had a slogan like that, but they've made it real. I think in part because they had no choice, but I think the business has very smartly embraced it. And I think it's been to the benefit of the business by embracing the fact that information is going to get out anyway. So let's us be the ones who are ahead and out front of the story.
Yeah, I think about that with regard to Becky Lynch and coming out, talking to Asuka in the ring and saying, I'm pregnant and I have to walk away. Doing it in such a public view just made her an even bigger star than she already was, and set the fans up desperate to see her come back when she was past her maternity leave, even though that resulted in her coming back and turning heel right away.
Mm-hmm. Guys, we have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to open up the floor to you. What do y'all want to talk about?
Well, I want to throw out we're looking at the card. Obviously, there's some results from last night. We won't do any spoilers for folks who are going to be, tuning in later. But for day 2, the match I'm looking forward to is the Hell in a Cell match with Edge and Finn Balor. Edge, I mean, going back to the classic matches with Edge, Christian, the Hardys, the tables, ladders, chairs matches, he's always been able to take it up to another level with some of these matches. I'm not expecting Taker Foley, but I'm interested in light of where he is in his career now. Can the so-called rated R superstar still deliver an epic match in a forum that lends itself to a whole lot of spots that will make people say, I guess we could say it on our show, holy shit, holy shit. That's the one I'm looking forward to, because Balor, I think, could carry himself well in that sort of match. I'm wondering how much Edge is going to put his body on the line based on where he is in his career.
I think Balor's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting there. When he comes out as the Demon, that's one of those characters right now that I love. When he gets all gussied up for a main event level match like this, that's the aspect of Finn Balor that I really, really enjoy watching.
Well, as we were talking in the pre-show, I'm not sure, and again, not to foreshadow anything, I'm not sure where the whole Judgment Day gimmick and faction goes after WrestleMania. So I'm thinking you might just see a match where both superstars get over. I mean, Edge certainly for sentimental reasons, but yeah, I've never liked Irish biker dude Finn Balor. I've always been better with his demon persona, and that's very popular too. So I think it could be a good bout of storytelling where both of them wind up, getting huge pops from the crowd when it's done.
Yeah, I think it's going to be curious to see where Dominic falls out in all of this, because you're right. Rhea Ripley last night was being cheered heavily, and part of that is that people really like to boo Charlotte Flair. So I think it was a little tough for Charlotte to carry the babyface side of that equation. And I see everything in Damian Priest that he could be a major star. He's still learning. Right. He's relatively new, and absolutely he could be a top tier type of babyface.
Oh, I see him as where Roman Reigns was when he was just coming out of the Shield.
Yep. Now, if I could do a little bit of a self-serving plug, I do want to make sure that everyone here in Maryland knows we are coming up on the 25th anniversary of Maryland Championship Wrestling in July this year. So we're having a major weekend, including a 25th anniversary show on Friday, July 21st. That's going to have a lot of folks coming back. I hope that Platinum Nat will be making an appearance. Don't know for sure yet. And then our annual Shamrock Cup the following night on July 22nd. It's going to be a major weekend for anyone who's a wrestling fan in the state of Maryland. Come on out and see what we got.
Well, Steve and I have both been to MCW cards in our time, and we've both had a blast. So I would second, and Steve will, I'm sure, third, that y'all should go. If you like wrestling and you like supporting local talent, then come.
And to me, it really is wrestling at its purest. I mean, I love WWE. I was an NWA guy back in the 80s, full disclosure. I really wasn't into the Hulkamania era. I was much more of a Saturday night on TBS, the mothership, if you will, as Dusty would say. But because I always kind of liked it as purest form, and I still think some of the territories that are still out there, the regionals that are still out there, it to me, it harkens back to what I loved about wrestling before it became a glitzy, glamorous show, even though I love that stuff. So, Nat, is there a website where people can go? Because I'm sure there are going to be things you're going to put out there, surprises that might pop up that you want to tease as we get towards summer.
Well, absolutely. You're going to want to follow MCW Pro Wrestling on social media if you're interested. Otherwise, mcwprowrestling.com will have all the up-to-date information and links for buying tickets.
Well, I am going to brag on my WWF Winged Eagle World Championship heavyweight belt that I wound up getting myself as part of Christmas, in part because Steve and I were making fun on how local politicians are bringing championship belts to fundraisers and so-called unity breakfasts and all that. It's always a great way to show unity by saying, I win, I win, I win. That's always a great show of unity. but I'm gonna leave. We have about 5 minutes left, and a thing I want to explore. I know we still have another huge night of WrestleMania, but tomorrow evening's WrestleMania Monday after edition of Monday Night Raw always provides a surprise or two. Would anybody like to, and again, be careful not to show off any WrestleMania spoilers, would anybody like to prognosticate such an event?
Well, I think we're going to see the premiere tomorrow, almost without a doubt, that Bronson Rex Steiner, Ron Breaker, will be making his Raw debut. They just set him up, I think, to make his main event debut based on some things that went on, again, without spoilers, for the NXT pay-per-view this weekend. Looking forward to seeing him and seeing what kind of star he can become if he can follow in his father's footsteps.
I'm gonna be interested to see what happens with the bloodline, and what fallout there might be from this weekend. In the article I mentioned on ESPN.com, Roman talked about at one point they were trying to get together a family versus family match with The Rock, but it was just obvious that Dwayne Johnson, the actor slash celebrity slash well-paid guy, just wasn't going to have time to get into this type of shape that he wanted to carry that match. I'm still wondering if there isn't a fallout and The Rock has to come back to try to get everybody straight. So I don't know if it means The Rock shows up tomorrow night, but I think we could see fallout that might lead us that way.
I'm willing to believe he shows up on the 40th anniversary of WrestleMania next year.
Mhm.
And we'll see Rock and Roman.
I'm going to do two things. I'm going to go one for tomorrow night and one for later on in April. Tomorrow night, I expect to see at the beginning, at least the beginning, depending on what happens tonight, of the heel turn of Bianca Belair. And second, later this month, challenging the top two tag teams in the WWE will be a new tag team who formerly worked in the WWE under NXT, but made quite a bit of a wave in AEW, called FTR. So I expect to see them come in and challenge those top two teams and make an impact. I know that's near and dear to Nat's heart because they seem to be the direct lineage of inheritance to the skilled mechanics and technicians that characterize the Midnight Express.
Absolutely. They're also the modern day brain busters. I look at
that they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would mark out so huge if sometime in April, Paul Heyman and the Usos are in the ring, and out comes FTR to the Midnight Express music with James E. Cornette. Now, how nice would that be?
Yeah, that I would pop like I was 10 years old again.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Huge fan of Cornette.
Should be in the Hall of Fame. Yeah.
I mean, I don't see it happening because so much hate, so many burned bridges. But man, that would be fun.
Yeah.
The mic work
just
would be great.
being on the cell phone. If you had that reverse of, what was it, 1990, 1989? Wait, who is this? What are you talking about? Just coming out and dumping up the way it was with the old Midnights versus the new Midnights.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. Culminating in a scaffold match at SummerSlam. Oh,
jeez.
We can still book this, guys.
Yep. The modern night of the Skywalkers.
Nat, it has been a pleasure. Thank you again for joining us, sir.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Awesome.
Happy to be here.
Steve, I wish you well as you navigate the winds of Howard County, Maryland.
We'll do what we can, and maybe next time I'll be in a home.
Your home, not a home.
A
your
home, yes. Ironically, yeah. We'll see where we go from here. That's all I'll say.
Oh my word. Oh my word. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, we start to cut the final episodes. So look out. There's mayhem. Coming next is April the 10th, where I will not be a host, but Steve Hunt and Jason Booms will be interviewing a special guest.
There you go.
You can't wait to see it.
There's a nice teaser. There's a nice teaser for you. Tune in.
Absolutely. Later, for until then, you have been watching or listening to another edition of Forward Maryland. Have a great week, everybody. Take care.